Hello student. Today we are going to learn about Unit 4 from your Plant Physiology paper second, that is Ascent of sap. Now, while learning this fourth unit from your Plant Physiology paper, we should know actually what is sap, and then we will get idea about what is ascent, isn't it? Now, what is sap? Sap is the dilute solution of a water and minerals. Sap is the dilute solution of water and minerals, and that is absorbed from the soil, which moves upward from the roots to the various parts of the plant. So that is actually sap is there. Now, what is ascent of sap? Definition you will have to keep in mind. Ascent means upward. The upward movement of a water from the root to the aerial parts of the plant body is called as a ascent of sap. Students, you have to understand actually what is ascent of sap. Ascent of sap is nothing but upward movement of water from the root to the aerial parts of plant body is known as a ascent of sap. Again, I am going to tell you this definition to you, because ascent of sap is nothing but the upward movement of water from the root to the aerial parts of the plant body is called as ascent of sap. Very interesting things are there. It is fascinating to understand how actually water moves in a plant to such a great height, such as up to the 400 feet. Friends, keep in mind, there is a 4,000-year-old giant tree plant is there, and height of that plant is about 115 meters, or that is of a 400 feet. Very interesting to understand actually how actually plants absorbs the water up to the 400 feet height, and the plant transport water through their stem must be incredible. Actually, the phenomenon of ascending of absorbed water is against the gravitation through the vessels and tracheids of the xylem, and that is also known as a ascent of sap. My friends, which exactly tissue, and again it will go deep to that one, which element of that tissue is responsible for the ascent of sap? As we know that actually xylem is the water conducting tissue, and that xylem actually sends the water up to the 400 feet against the gravitation, but through the vessels and tracheids of the xylem. We know that xylem is a complex tissue. It is composed of four elements, that are vessels 1, tracheids 2, xylem parenchyma 3, and xylem sclerenchyma 4. And out of that four elements, the vessels and tracheids are responsible for the transportation of a water from root to the deep or where it is required, isn't it? Now, path of ascent of sap, isn't it? Path of ascent of sap. As already I have told you, xylem is the water conducting tissue. Is it true? For that one of the experiments is performed by first time one of the great scientists, Stephen Halles. Name of that scientist is a Stephen Halles. This Stephen Halles performed one of the experiment and named to that experiment as a ringing experiment. Named to that experiment as a ringing experiment, just to find out the exact path of ascent of sap. It also demonstrated the ascent of sap in the stem through the vessels and tracheas of the xylem. Isn't it? Although ascent of sap takes place through, we have to say that stem. Exactly, ascent of sap takes place stem through the vessels and tracheas of the xylem tissue. Keep in mind. Now, what is this ringing experiment? How, with the help of this ringing experiment, we will be able to prove that? We will be able to prove that the path of ascent of sap is through the vessels and tracheas of xylem. Now, we will get idea about that ringing experiment first of all. For this experiment, take a potted plant and remove in circular fashion at some places of the stem. What we have to remove? All the outer tissue. In the sense, which things are there in the outer tissue? Epidermis, cortex, endodermis, pericycle and phloem. So we have to remove in circular fashion at some places of the stem all that outer tissue, means all that epidermis, cortex, endodermis, pericycle and phloem, except vessels and tracheas of the xylem and pith, that we have to keep as it is without damage. Only we have to remove in circular fashion outer tissue that are nothing but epidermis, cortex, endodermis, pericycle and phloem, but except vessels and tracheas of the xylem and pith. Leave the experiment for few days and observe that the leaves of the plants are still green. Leaves of the plants are still green. It proves that water and soluble salts ascends through the xylem tissue. Now the question arises that the water may be ascend to the pith cell instead of the xylem cells. Now question arises that water may also ascend to the or through the pith cells, PITH, pith cells instead of xylem cells. Such a questions were there because we have kept intact only the pith and xylem, but we have to prove that either xylem or pith, and that is proved that through the xylem only ascent of sap takes place. For that one, the pith cells, the pith cells destroyed with the help of a large needles, wires or set or wires, isn't it? And said the experiment. So what we have done in the ringing experiment, definitely we have removed outer circular part of the stem, in the sense we have removed epidermis, we have removed cortex, endodermis, pericycle and phloem, but we have kept intact only pith and xylem. But again, out of that, either xylem or through pith, the ascent of sap takes place, that we want to find out, and for that one we have damaged the pith cells, and then also there is ascent of sap took place, in the sense definitely there is a ascent of sap takes place through the stem only. Now, as we have theoretically or in words we have seen that experiment, here you will be able to see that the potted plant we have taken, earthen potted plant we have taken. Now at this region we will be able to see that bark removed in a circular fashion. So we have removed epidermis, cortex and pericycle and phloem. We have removed all these things. Only we have kept intact xylem and tracheas. And as it is, we have left this experiment for few days, and that then we came to know that the plant still remain green, means above part of this plant from the removed bark area, circularly we have removed bark from that one, and only we have kept intact, that is nothing but the xylem, that is xylem, vessels and tracheas are there, and definitely there is a ascent of sap takes place. So this experiment proves that is nothing but, and this experiment is known as a ringing experiment, because we have removed the ring fashion, circular fashion stem from the potted plants. Now, this is the best and excellent example, Sequoia gigantea, isn't it? So Sequoia gigantea is the, we have to say that, best example, and this example gives us idea about actually the plant absorbs the water, ascends the water to the height that is 115 meters. 15 meters, in the sense that ascent of sap takes place through the roots, through the xylem only, and that ascent of sap is always against the gravitation, and in this context there may be the theory called as a theory of a ascent of sap, isn't it? Sequoia gigantea is a older plant having height 115 meter, up to that one there we can find the reaches the sap. Now many scientists have given many theories. So vital theories today we have to learn. What are the vital theories? Vital theories are nothing but vital force theory. According to this theory, the force required for the ascent of sap are generated in living cells of the plant. What is vital theory? Vital force theory. According to this theory, the force required for the reaching water up to the 115 meter height or for the ascent of sap up to the tip of the plant, there is a generation, there is a formation of some forces in the living cells of the plant. And some of the vital theories today we have to learn, which have explained, which have which are going to give us idea actually how the ascent of sap takes place. And that important vital theories are nothing but first one, root pressure theory, Goldski, God-Levitsky theory, vital theory. Again, I am going to give you the three names of the theory, vital force theory. First one is a root pressure theory, second is a God-Levitsky theory, and third one is the vital theory. Now, what root pressure theory is going to give idea about the ascent of sap. So here we can see when actually watered plant is cut near the base, xylem sap flows out at the end with the pressure. That we can also experience. Some plants are there early in the morning, too much watered plant. If we cut at the base, at that time near the base, xylem sap comes out or flows out, and that is with pressure. So here, because of root pressure, things are going to happen. Now, mainly such type of things we can observe in case of a herbaceous plants. That is, water oozes out due to bleeding or due to some injuries. And according to this theory, root pressure appears due to the pressure. If root is supplied with isotonic or hypotonic solution, if root is supplied with the isotonic or hypotonic solution, root pressure disappears. Isn't it? Disappearance of a root pressure is there when we supply isotonic or hypertonic solutions. The plant possesses root pressure of only 2 atmosphere, but according to the scientists, there is only 2 atmospheric pressure is there, and that pressure have capacity to ascend the sap up to maximum height, that is of a 20 meter, not more than that one. So in Sequoia gigantea we have seen actually the water, or we have to say that not water but the sap reaches up to the, ascends up to the 115 meter, and this root pressure have a capacity to only ascend the sap up to 20 meters. So this theory fails here. Means root pressure not responsible for the ascent of sap. That is proved here. Now, God-Levitsky theory, which the scientist God-Levitsky put in 1884. According to God-Levitsky theory, that water ascends in the plant due to pumping action. According to God-Levitsky, the ascent of sap takes place due to pumping action of the cells of xylem, parenchyma and medullary arrays. So these things are there which are going to help in ascent of sap, that is according to God-Levitsky, and the theory put forth by God-Levitsky in 1884. So pumping action occurs in xylem parenchyma and medullary res. Now, another theory which is put forth by the great Indian scientist Sir J.C. Bose in 1923. According to their theory, there is a pulsation takes place in the plant, and that pulsation is responsible for the ascent of a sap. And just to prove that one, the Sir J.C. Bose conducted one of the experiment, and that experiment gives idea that pulsation takes place in the plant, and that pulsation is responsible for the ascent of sap. So so living cells of innermost layer of cortex had a dramatic pulsation, and this pulsation are responsible for the upward movement of water or sap. The needle attached to the galvanometer was inserted in the plant. What the J.C. Bose has done just to come to the conclusion related with pulsation theory is responsible for ascent of sap, he has conducted one experiment. In that experiment, fine needle is attached to the galvanometer was inserted in the stem, and galvanometer shows slow oscillations, but when it is touched to the cortex cells, it turned violent, indicating that the cells are pulsating. And because of that pulsation, because of pulsating process, there is ascent of sap takes place, which is actually given by the Sir J.C. Bose in 1923. But all these vital theories are proved to be wrong by Strasburger in 1893. So Strasburger in 1983 proved that the vital theories are wrong. He observed that the continuous ascending movement of the water, even if the cells of a parenchyma and medullary rays destroyed with the help of a poisonous chemical substance like picric acid. So what this Strasburger in 1893 proved that if the cells of parenchyma and medullary rays are destroyed with the help of a poisonous chemical substance like picric acid, then also he found that there is ascent of sap. So Strasburger is the name of a scientist who has given his hypothesis in 1893. So this is the pulsation theory. Here already I have given you idea that we can see galvanometer is there, and this galvanometer, one of the needle inserted into the potted live plant, that is inserted up to the cortex, and pulsation takes place, and because of that pulsation the ascent of sap takes place. So such an experiment was carried out, and here he found some oscillations, and because of that one he used to say that the electric probe of Sir J.C. Bose, electric current is there little bit, and pulsation, because of pulsation, and Sir J.C. Bose wanted to tell that pulsation theory is there in ascent of sap. With these friends, thank you very much. You have to learn all these theories, and first of all you have to remember the definition, that is ascent of sap. What is that? What is sap? Which theories are put forth by which scientist, and how that theory proved wrong by some scientists, how the experiments have been carried out by the scientists just to prove about the ascent of sap, or just to prove that which exact part of the tissue or element of the tissue are responsible for the ascent of sap. So that all I have taught you, given you idea. Now with this, thank you very